welcome back to our weekly segment here on the Thursday Night Podcast called Ask the Expert, where we bring on a guest who knows their stuff and can tell us all about Georgia State's upcoming opponent. This week, I'm previewing the Memphis Tigers with Jonah Dylan of the Commercial Appeal ahead of their Week 2 trip to Center Parc Stadium to face the Panthers. Jonah, thanks for coming on and joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to chat Memphis, Georgia State.
So I guess place to start would just be your time on the Memphis beat, how long you've been there, and kind of what you've seen, how they've risen since you've covered the program.
Yeah, this is my third year on the beat, so I started about 2 years ago, and it's been interesting. I mean, I've covered back-to-back double-digit win seasons, so we're kind of used to it around Memphis of going into every game expecting maybe not to win, but to be competitive. And again, every season the expectation has been either before the expanded playoff, be the top team in that group of five, and then since the playoff was expanded, this team really goes into every season, and I think is going to go into every season, assuming the format stays the same, feeling like it has a legitimate shot to make the playoff with the kind of resources and where the conference is and everything like that.
And I guess Ryan Silverfield, the current head coach, is a third in line of the last three Memphis head coaches that have kind of transformed the program. Was Justin Fuente, then Mike Norvell, who had a big win this past weekend down in Tallahassee. In this kind of lineage of turning the Tigers program around, what has maybe Ryan Silverfield's imprint been that you've seen kind of instill his DNA into the team?
Yeah, well, obviously he was here under Norvell, and so a lot of it was continuing some of the stuff they did before that. I think it's really been the consistency, because you look at anything of who's gone to the most bowl games in a row or who has the most home wins over the last decade or so, like you talked about, since Justin Fuente got here. And this is a program that has consistently gone to bowl games every single year and more often than not won them. And I think that's really impressive when you look at it over a long span, because you mentioned Mike Norvell, right? Teams bottom out. We saw it with Florida State last year. Sometimes you have a year where things just fall apart. That hasn't happened with Memphis really over the last decade. They've gone to a bowl game every year. And especially the group of five level, I mean, that's a tough thing to do. So it's been impressive to see how they've kind of consistently been winning games around here. Obviously, the next step is to make it back to the conference championship game, and they're hoping they can do that this year.
And I guess you mentioned the college football playoff of it all, and certainly it's right now feels as open as any G5 race for that spot has been. Boise losing to South Florida, Army losing, one of the better teams in the American last year. But how much of that is spoken about by Coach Silverfield, by the program? Because I know coaches love to be very week-by-week mentality, but is it something that's addressed of this is a attainable goal that we think we're going to get?
Yeah, this year not so much. Last year I think it was addressed a little bit more because it was the first year of the expanded playoff, obviously, and also going into last season, Memphis had a very veteran team, a lot of guys who had been with the program for a long time. Obviously, Seth Hennigan was the quarterback here for 4 years in a row. And they had a lot of players who had been with him for those 4 years, and obviously some transfers that came in the past couple of years. So they felt like they were really set up well for last year to kind of be their year. Obviously, it didn't happen. And then this year, again, it's been a ton of transfers and a lot of reloaded talent. I still think this team is very talented compared to the rest of the group of five. But I think that you look at nationally, Memphis isn't popping up as much as last year in terms of here's our prediction for who's going to be the top team and make the playoff. They've always been pretty clear. Their goal is the conference championship. Obviously, if you want to make the playoff, you're going to have to win the conference championship. And look, like I said, they haven't done that since 2019. And so that's kind of been the goal since then of getting back to that game. And once they can get there, then everything is kind of wide open for the playoff.
Obviously, we love talking all through the offseason. We run basically every possible topic because we're so hungry for games. I know it's only been one game, but now that we actually have something tangible to talk about, what do we maybe know now about the 2025 version after their 45-10 win against FCS Chattanooga last weekend?
Yeah, it's almost like you said, we spent all the offseason and then there's an FCS opponent and it's a blowout and we're like, oh my God, we learned so much. And it's like, well, let's wait until we see a little bit of a different level of competition because, obviously I was at the game on Saturday. It was not competitive. Chattanooga had an incredible, I don't know if it was intended, but it was an incredible onside kick to start the game where they just blasted it off the guy standing in the front, basically. And at that moment, you were thinking all right, here we go. Then they had a field goal blocked on the ensuing drive, went down early, and the game was never competitive. So I think from the Memphis perspective, this is a new offense than what we saw last year and really have seen in the past because of the quarterback. And the quarterback is Brendan Lewis, who's a a running quarterback. He's a dual threat quarterback, and that meant a lot more quarterback run game stuff. And you could tell it opened up a lot in the run game for the running backs too. Like that's the strength of this team. We knew that coming in. We knew we were going to see that kind of stuff. But to see how they balanced on offense in a game where like they could have pretty much done whatever they wanted, there were more run plays than pass plays, and they were clearly committed to that. They were committed to having multiple running backs touch the ball and to have Brendan Lewis run the ball a lot. And I think that's their blueprint for the season, even against teams where the game's going to be more competitive. I think that they're going to want to run the ball a lot. And so I would expect to see more of that moving forward. Now, it's a different type of run than, the Iowa line up in the I formation and run the ball up the middle and get 3 yards and then go for it on 4th and 1 and run it up the middle. Iowa would never go for it on 4th and 1. They would punt. But, that type of thing, I think it's a lot more side-to-side movement. The goal is to get the defense kind of off guard. And so we saw that. I think there's questions about the passing game, specifically about the receiving core. But the running game, and especially the way the running backs played and the way Brendan Lewis played, that was my main takeaway from week 1.
And I guess it's been a high-scoring offense basically year on year during this run, but is it a tempo offense? Because that's something that Georgia State struggled with, along with the SEC talent, in their opening loss against Ole Miss.
Yeah, it has been. It wasn't so much what we saw against Chattanooga, but again, like they kind of could do whatever they wanted. They've been a team that in the past, and I think you'll see this consistently under Tim Cramsey, their offensive coordinator. He's been here for a couple years. They'll go to tempo when they feel like they have an advantage in the game, but then they'll kind of come back out of it. So when you watch Memphis, you might see a drive where everything goes fast, and you're thinking, okay, that worked out really well. They might not go back to it the next drive. That's kind of been how they operate. So they have the ability to do that. And like you said, if they see something on tape of, hey, this defense struggles against that, then I think that is something that they'll dial up a little bit more to try to catch them off guard.
I guess on the other side of things, the defense has maybe been the hang-up as far as what stopped them from being that American champ CFP team in the 12-team era at least. Only one game against an FCS team, so not a lot to go on, but what were the thoughts heading into the season and maybe through one game on what steps the defense has taken, will take?
Yeah, so in terms of personnel, almost complete facelift defensively. They have one starter coming back from last year. And they had a lot of players last year who were really talented and played really well, even though I know the defense as a whole, it wasn't great. There's a lot of NFL players on that defense. And so now you're bringing a bunch of new guys. They brought in a really, really talented core of linebackers, but everybody's new. And so week 1 was kind of like, let's see what this thing looks like. Even if we've seen these guys play at other schools and we've seen their stats, like let's see how they actually play together. And I do think, look, you can spend all the time in the offseason working on chemistry and reads and stuff, but you got to get out there and kind of figure it out together. And I think they're still doing that. I think there were a couple times where it was like, okay, let's make sure everyone's on the same page. But they've got a lot of athleticism on that defense. I think that when Jordan Higgins took over as defensive coordinator, his thing was we're going to play fast. And then he had an entire season, now this is his second year, to kind of recruit players to play in that specific system. And I think he's got a better idea of how he wants to play now. And so he's got players that fit exactly that type of structure. And so, yeah, the defense has been kind of, let's get the offense on their heels. Let's catch them off guard. There's going to be a lot of people, running around. Obviously, it's more sophisticated than that, but there's a lot of movement, and what they're going to try to do is frustrate offenses with their kind of athleticism and speed.
Who are some of the players that, whether it's the Georgia State coaching staff's going to be circling or guys that you're just interested to keep watching as the season progresses? Just names to watch on Saturday.
On offense or defense or both?
I guess both. We can start with the offense.
Yeah, I mean, on offense, Sutton Smith, who's one of their top running backs. So they kind of had this two-headed monster at running back we expected going into the season, Sutton Smith and Greg DuBosier. Greg DuBosier went out in the first quarter of the game with an injury, and we're not sure what his status is going into this weekend. Sutton Smith is an interesting story because last year, game 1, quarter 1, tore his ACL and missed the entire season. He's somebody that Memphis fans have been really, really excited about since he's been here. He's a home run hitter type running back, right? Anytime he touches the ball, you feel like he could take it to the house. And if he can stay healthy all season, we're looking at one of the top running backs in the conference for sure. And so if Greg DuBosier is out, that means that Sutton Smith is going to be the feature back. And again, somebody who anytime he touches the ball, you've got to be on high alert. On offense also, I mean, this receiving core totally new. It's interesting to see who kind of emerges. Ryan Silverfield has talked about, let's play 7-8 guys, and see what happens. And they did that. They had 10 guys who had catches on Saturday. Now, ideally, I think they would like to have here's who our number one receiver is, and that's not clear yet. Cortez Braham is somebody I would keep my eye on. I think he's going to play more and more. He was a transfer from Nevada, basically was suing the NCAA for more eligibility, got an injunction in the summer and decided he was going to transfer to Memphis and join the roster 2 weeks before the season started. So somebody who's obviously trying to get up to speed as quickly as possible. I guess Georgia State has a somewhat similar situation going on this week. But Cortez Braham, we didn't know how much he was going to play in the first game because he's still learning the playbook and stuff like that. He looked good. He had a touchdown catch. He played last year with Brandon Lewis at Nevada, so they have a lot of familiarity. And someone who I think, assuming that he continues to learn the playbook and stuff, is going to probably emerge as Memphis' top receiver. Defensively, there's a bunch of guys. I think Chris Bracey is a safety who played really well. He's a transfer from UAB. Played really well on Saturday, kind of a ball hawking type player, kind of always around the ball whenever you're looking around. And then the linebacker core, all three of the Everett Rousseau, Sam Brumfield, Drew Watts, who are their three linebacker starters, all really impressive with what they did last year, all transfers. And if they can really build chemistry together, I think that's going to be one of the top linebacking cores in the conference.
And I guess the last thing to mention, because it's a game in Atlanta, and this game's been on the books for a while, predating my time doing this podcast, your time on the Memphis Speed is supposed to be played in 2017. Is there any kind of significant portion of the lineup from the roster for Memphis that's from the Atlanta or the Georgia area? And does this game matter as far as getting into this footprint for recruiting, maybe getting guys a home game in front of some family?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting actually because Memphis, yes is the answer right off the bat, because Memphis has actually been recruiting Georgia in a lot of ways more than they've been recruiting Tennessee over the past couple of years. I mentioned Sutton Smith, he's from Georgia. A lot of these guys, and obviously one of the biggest recruiting story for Memphis over the past year was recruiting AJ Hose, a 4-star quarterback. Almost every school wanted him, and he's deciding between Florida and Memphis, and chose Memphis. He's also from Georgia, and so that's been a thing over the past couple of years. They've really keyed in on Georgia as a place to recruit from. And like I said, they've been finding success pretty consistently, a lot of guys that are coming from there. And so this is an opportunity to do that. This is, like you said, an opportunity for guys who are on the team and their families who are going to play closer to home. They can be there. And yeah, it is interesting because I think in 2017, I wouldn't have said Memphis is focused on that, but it seems like now they are. Obviously, these recruiting things, they move so quickly. Next year it might be a different state, it might be a different area, but for now, Memphis is really focused on Georgia in terms of recruiting, and so it is important for that.
Jonah, appreciate the time. Thanks for giving us the lowdown on the Memphis Tigers ahead of Saturday's game.